Hello and welcome to this talk. I'm James and I'll be discussing Deep API Learning Revisited by Jin Guo and myself from McGill University. This is a replication study based on Deep API Learning by Gu et al., published in FSE 2016. Their work describes an API learning task. Given a description of a task like copy file, the tool that they developed can tell you the sequence of API functions in the Java SDK that you would have to call in order to accomplish that task. This can save the programmer from having to figure out the API sequence from the API documentation or other resources, which can be incomplete or incorrect or just difficult to search. The translation from natural language to API calls is done by an RNN encoder-decoder, which is a popular language model used for translating from one language to another. The Deep API Learning paper has been broadly cited since its publication, but since it's from 2016, we thought we could update certain aspects of it. First, we found that according to many sources, Python has exceeded Java in popularity in the last few years. So we asked whether we could retrain the model using Python API sequences instead of Java API sequences. Our results indicate that this technique works about equally well for both languages. Second, we tried using a newer neural net model, the Transformer, which was published in 2017 and has been shown to outperform the RNN on many language translation tasks. Specifically, we used CodeBERT, which is a transformer model that is pre-trained on self-supervised natural language and programming language tasks. Our results indicate that the transformer outperforms the RNN on the API generation task, and CodeBERT, with its pre-training, performs even better. To develop the API learning task for Java, Gu et al. Downloaded about 400,000 Java projects from GitHub, and then scanned the source code for any functions that have a Java doc. The Java doc usually describes what the function does in natural language, so they would extract a description from the Java doc and then extract the API calls from the function body. Notice that because Java is strongly typed, they are able to infer the class on which a method is called, and the canonical name of the method is used in the API sequence instead of the variable name that appears in the code. Each description in API sequence pair is then designated as either a training instance or a test instance. They collected about 2 million training pairs and about 2,000 test instances. We curated our Python training set following a similar procedure. We downloaded about 250,000 Python projects and extracted about 800,000 training pairs and 10,000 test pairs. We extracted a description of each function from the docstring of the function, if there was one, or from the name of the function if it contained at least 3 words. We extracted the API sequence from function calls in the function body. Since Python is not strongly typed, we didn't extract method calls, but most of the Python API is not object-oriented, so this wasn't much of a problem. For our purposes, we considered any call to a function that was imported from an external module to be an API call. For example, in this code, we would have to determine whether npmemmap is an API call. We would check if numpy is a module in the project, and if not, then npmemmap is added to the API sequence using its canonical name, numpymemmap. If np were not an imported symbol, we would consider this to be a method call and ignore it. To measure the performance of the models, we follow a fairly standard approach. We set aside some of the instances to be used as test pairs. For each test pair, we query the model with the description from the test pair and obtain a generated API sequence. We compare the generated API sequence with the API sequence from the test pair by computing the BLEU-4 score, which measures the similarity between the two sequences. After we extracted all of our instances, we removed all duplicates. We found that there are a lot of duplicate functions between projects on GitHub, especially after the code is distilled into description and API sequence pairs. About 78% of the instances in our Python dataset were duplicates. We performed similar duplication detection and found 75% of the instances in the original Java dataset were also duplicates. If these duplicates are not removed, then many of the test instances will also be found in the training set, which artificially inflates our test scores, since the model is better at memorizing the training examples than it is at generalizing to unseen queries. Here's a graph showing the evaluation of the models over time, and this shows what a difference it makes if we leave the duplicates in with the test set. The red line shows our results if we leave the duplicates in. Note that these are two different measurements of the same model. This table summarizes all of our results. In the right column, we have the results if we don't remove the duplicates from the test set. For all of the other results, we've removed the duplicates to have a standard baseline for comparison. In the second row, we see that CodeBERT outperforms the RNN encoder-decoder. The performance is apparently better for Python, but this is possibly an artifact of the way the BLEU scores are calculated, as we will see later. We were interested in how much of CodeBERT's performance is due to the transformer architecture and how much is due to CodeBERT's pre-training. We discarded the pre-training by randomizing the parameters and then repeating the training. This score shows that convergence was faster with the pre-training, but we still see an improvement even without the pre-training. This graph shows our evaluation of the models as we were training them. Note that we didn't train these models all the way to convergence, so we don't know whether they would ultimately converge to the same results. Here are some example queries and their answers. Whenever an answer is plausible, even if it's not the most efficient answer, we give it a check mark. You can see that even with the new CodeBERT neural net, we still get incorrect answers sometimes. If we compare the example queries from Python to the example queries from Java, we notice that the Java API sequences are usually longer, because the Java API is object-oriented and requires objects to be constructed and closed. The models often give answers that are close to the correct answer, but not quite. The blue score takes this into account, but if a short sequence is exactly correct, the blue score is 100%. This may account for the Python model's better blue scores, despite its performance on the test queries being about the same. Further work would have to be done to collect a sample of queries that real users would type and to measure whether the responses are plausible. This presents some difficulty because sometimes there are several right answers. Here, we're showing only the top answer that was given by the neural net, but it is possible to get, say, the top 5 answers from the model or the top 10, and users could be presented with multiple answers and choose the most appropriate. We also acknowledge a possible shortcoming of this approach, which is that it only works for common API calls that have a history of use in open source software. For this method to work for new APIs or rare APIs, future work might try to extract training pairs from the API documentation. We look forward to seeing how this technique is improved and developed in the future. Thank you for watching.